we're thinking we're going to see, maybe a broken leg or nothing could have prepared us for what came out of that room. The doctor comes and he says, we need to speak to you and the dad. And so we go into the room, me, him, and his dad. And he says, listen, Zyere has 3 skull fractures. He has all his facial bones are fractured or shattered. He has fluid leaking from his brain. It's coming, and blood out of his ears and his nose. He said with his lungs, they're not working. We can't get him to sustain breath on his own. He said, and it looks like there's swelling of the brain. He said, I'm afraid that he may not make it through the night.
We were unsure how bad the injuries were when he first came up, but what was clear to us was his lungs were not working. On that night, I left the operating room and I got on an elevator and I saw a woman on the elevator who looked fairly distraught.
And I'm on the elevator and I got nothing left. I got no other, I just, only thing I have is what they're telling me. And this doctor gets on the elevator.
The woman looked at me a little puzzled and asked me if I was the person that was going upstairs to save her baby.
And I said, I need you to save my son's life. And he looked at me. I will never forget the look he gave me like that. He did not expect me to say that to him.
At that moment, I put 2 and 2 together and I understood that this was clearly the mother of the child up in our pediatric intensive care unit, at which time I sort of put it all together that I had the skill set to do it, and although it wasn't where I was going, I thought it might be wise to go up and take a look.
And he says, I'm looking to things. And he walks towards the room where my son is.
That's when I met the patient and talked with our pediatric intensive care unit attendings who had done about as much as they could. They were taking wonderful care of the patient, but still his oxygenation numbers were not consistent with life. I sort of made a few phone calls to figure out what was the plan and who was where to be able to take care of this child, and it became clear through the pediatric intensive care unit attendings and myself that we had a limited amount of time to do something to save his life.
And I'm saying, fight, baby, fight. And then the doctor comes in and he taps me on my shoulders. I turn around and I look at him. He says, you remember me? And I smile because no one else knows. So I said, yeah, I remember you. You're the one from the elevator. And he said, I came to do what you asked me to do. So I was like, I was so happy in that second because there was no hope in that room. It was just my faith. And so I'm like, okay, well, what do we need to talk? He's like, come out here. So he tells me, again, everything that's wrong with Zyere, he runs it down. He said, in time, all this stuff can heal itself or be fixed. He said, but we can't do anything if we can't get him to breathe.
So we made a decision to put him on a lung bypass system called ECMO, which is a system that pulls blood out of the body, oxygenates it outside of the body, and puts it back in.
Together we made the decision and placed him on this machine.
He said, if we do that, we may be able to sustain your son. He said, now, I need to let you know that if you make this decision to allow me to do this, there is a risk of death. He said, but if we don't do it, he will surely die before the night's over. So it wasn't a whole lot to it. Where do I sign? Where's the paper at?
He was a kid who was going to die, and he's now acting absolutely normally. So it's wonderful to see.